No doubt you've heard me going on about Gamersup's my favourite energy formula, but you have to understand, I'm from the north and I remember the bad old days of energy drinks. You get up the day after winter fell, hoping for a little spring in your step from that little knockback, and you know what? Yeah, you went up pretty hard, you zoomed around a little bit, and then you dropped off, didn't you? Well, that series of events seems familiar. Okay. Gamersups is always coming out with brand new flavours, like Bigfoot Juice. It's a legit energy release, so you can gradually power up and enjoy your energy. You know, not be screaming and rushing around only for it all to end in tears. You know, getting your Rick on. Rick and Morty reference there. It's a stark contrast to the other flavours and drinks on the market. Some companies are just trying to rob you. It makes no sense to pay full price. Get 10% off with my code Thorin, Thorin, at gamersups.gg. And if you want to get some in now, stock up. Winter is coming. Now, recently on Reddit, someone posted a screenshot where basically they just showed on LAN who has played the most rounds in the history of CSGO, most maps, all that jazz. And what I thought was, this is exactly the sort of content, really, I actually should do on my channel, because anyone who looks at that list, you're not really going to get that much from it. You're going to know who's played the most. That's going to tell you that. So you're going to know sort of like who was the most active, who's been around a long time, but you're not going to really get a sense of like how good are these players? Like, what does it mean? There's also other information you can obviously fade in there. So I decided I'll actually show you basically the context of this list. So here we go. As you can see, this is rounds played on LAN all time. No filter for like rating, all that. No map filter, nothing. It's just LAN. So what we'll do is make this a little bit bigger. And then basically, let's break it down. So we start at the top. You've got 3 Danes, haven't you? Interesting detail for those who don't know, and maybe you've only followed modern day Counter-Strike. Those 3 players all played together. They were all in the TSM/late. They were started in Dignitas, but they very quickly after one tournament changed to TSM, later in Astralis together. So Carrigan, it's actually amazing that Carrigan's got the most, almost the most maps. Sickness has got the most maps, but most rounds played. That's incredible. Shows you what an insane tenure he had. For people who don't know, before that, he was in teams like Fnatic, Mouse Sports, now called Mouse. Now, obviously, compared to everyone else on the list, he has an absurd kill-death differential, which, yeah, that's because he was never a top player. In CSGO, he was basically the IGL from the time he reached this team onwards. So we're talking about early 2015 at that point in time. In other teams, he just wasn't that good. In fact, he thought about retiring because if people don't know, in CS 1.6, he'd actually been like a 2nd or 3rd star in some good teams. Not at top teams, but good teams. Obviously, his kill death overall is really low compared to everyone else on this list because he's just not that skilled. He's often put himself in entry positions. And as a result, his rating's really low. But you know what? There's a reason this guy might go down as the greatest in-game leader of all time. He's done it all. He's been in all sorts of teams. He's always been relevant since he became an IGL. Doesn't matter what level he was at. And you can see here, yeah, he's at the top of the list. Not the best player by any means, but it's certainly interesting how there's not that many other IGLs on this list, right? You go down, right? We're not including things like where Shox briefly IGL. So we go all the way down. Yeah, you got Taz, but he shared IGL with Neo, who's also on the list. You go down, I don't count MPK. You got Fallen, okay, but he's a lot further down. Played quite a lot fewer rounds than Carrigan. You keep going down. You get to Glaive, second from the bottom on this particular list. By the way, has a much better kill-death differential. True, he did play a little bit in Heroic Morph as a fragger, but Glaive's always just been a much better fragger as an IGL than most of the other IGLs in the game. Now, along those lines, yeah, if you go down and you do look at Taz, you know what? Taz's kill-death differential is actually pretty legit when you consider what the Carrigans are. You consider basically he's at a level where if you go up, someone like Apex is only plus 50. Taz is minus 90. That's crazy. Like, you would obviously consider, look, Apex plays entry. Yeah, that's really tough. It's a bad role for kill death differential. But you'd think Taz, most of the time, he's playing really shit roles when he's in Virtus Pro, right? Just shows you how good Virtus Pro collectively were. And for people who don't know, in the early days, the first couple of years, sometimes Taz was the best player in that team before they got Snacks and Bialy. And actually was usually, for my money, a better fragger than Neo, even though Neo was a better clutch player and maybe overall all-around player. And I also thought Taz was the better IGL, quite frankly. But that also combines my bias of knowing him from CS 1.6. I know a lot of people will say maybe Neo was the best IGL at this point in time. There's an interesting debate to be had there. If people can go back, maybe I'll do this myself and look up and track who's the IGL when and what reasons they changed. It was usually just internal conflicts. You look at the top of the list again. Obviously, Xyp9x has played a bazillion years. He's obviously a guy where, as you can imagine, aside from that breaking online play, this is LAN, he wasn't a guy who's ever taken tournaments off, whereas people like Device have taken tournaments off. Sometimes there's been, even dupreeh had part of a major he couldn't play, if you remember, ESL1 Clone 2016. Xyp9x also was on a team like Karrigan, a Fnatic team previously, and played with different sets of players before he arrived at this squad. dupreeh, just a legend of the game, innit? One of the most long-serving top players ever. Like, I will say, for him, here's the thing, right? You look at his rating, it's not crazy higher than Xyp9x. I mean, 0.05 is still higher, much higher, but it's not absurd. But the key thing for me here is plus 1730 and plus 1.10 kill death for his entire career in CSGO on LAN. This guy really is just, there's a reason why he might go down as the GOAT entry fragger if you want. I wouldn't even hate on it. I wouldn't have hated on it before he won the majors. By the way, he was just one of the best to ever do that role. And especially for me, the thinking man's entry. A lot of entries are brute force entries who run in with aim. They're just willing to run through a brick wall. Or in the case of someone like Apex, he just doesn't care what positions you're taking and what you think you're going to do. He's just going to go for his shots anyway. And he understands that it's a volume position. dupreeh is the thinking man's entry guy, and he really always did have like a chess-like approach to doing it, even though it's a role people would usually think is a bit boneheaded. Then you come to Shox, legendary player. He's obviously played all the roles at this point in time. He's been an IGL, he's been a supportive element / an entry, so you know he won a major, he's been the star player and the mid-round player, he's even opted sometimes, he's even been an IGL briefly. Just a legend of the game. Played less maps than some of the people above him. In terms of rounds, played quite a lot. Oh, good stats overall, considering his slumps and the fact that he's had motivation issues throughout his career. Still just one of the best to ever do it. Then we have Apex, teammate of Shox, but admittedly not for that many years. And actually, for some weird reason, it didn't seem like Shox really rated him if you look what happened with some of the later teams and the way they used him in some of the other squads. This is a guy where, I mean, like I say, he's not even negative for kill death. He's been in some teams, by the way, that were brutal. He's been in somewhere for real. They used him like a hard entry for years beyond that role being hard entry. And they really did make him run through a brick wall. And in the years where they had Shox and MBK be the IGL and Happy was a bit washed, like this guy just had to do it on hard mode. And he could. If you don't know Apex at his prime, he would be the guy where he'd have like series where you just win 2-0 because he would just drop like plus 25 over a 2-map series. And he would just fucking body bag the best teams in the world. And there are squads out there, I'm going to guess like old school Na'Vi, maybe even Fnatic. Some of these guys must have nightmares about playing against Apex. He was just a monster on the T side. And that was especially noticeable in the really CT-sided meta. Funnily enough, we're back at one right now, aren't we? JW being highest up out of the Swedes might shock some people. Obviously, he's not really even a contender for best Swedish player ever. You look, plus 912. True, he is an AWPer. That needs to be said. Obviously, the rest of the stats aren't crazy. 1.04, 1.06. Okay, you sort of expect that kind of performance from him over his career because he was an up and down player. And there was even times where he didn't use the AWP. The real reason, if you don't know why he's this high up, is because obviously the Fnatic cause that he was a part of early on, people don't know this, actually were quality sides then. They were playoff teams even before they got to Pronax. They were even, if you don't know, at like DreamHack Summer 2013, they were in the final playing an IP back before they had Pronax in their squad. And that was when they'd, like, a day before, played that like esports Swedish Masters or whatever, where they were really close to beating an IP or took them way closer than teams used to at the time when they were just an unbeatable team on LAN. And then in the main event final, they got rocked because they were all up-and-comers. They weren't supposed to be there. But actually what you found was there was talent there, and the talent was supposed to be there. And when you brought in Pronax, they won a major later, the first major. Then you go to the next year, they bring in Olofmeister, Krims, swap up the lineup a little bit. Obviously, then they have one of the best runs ever for the rest of that year. He's still in the team when Pronax leaves, and they win the 6 tournaments in a row. Then later on, Fnatic was still making top 4s and still having playoff performances. He's always in the squad. It's Olofmeister that left. You go beyond that, obviously, they tried a few dodgy lineups. They had the Godsent lineup. Then he came back to Fnatic. Then people are going to forget There was the later period at the end of 2019 where they got that lineup back together. 2018, they managed to win those big tournaments to ESG and I am kind of say. Then you come to 2019. By the way, they're always a playoff team around this time. You come to 2019 and they became one of the best teams in the world after that player break, didn't they? They won a massive tournament, DreamHack Malmo, and were making top 4 finals at all the big lands before we went online pretty much. Then you go down, of course, kennyS was going to be here. This just shows, by the way, why I tell you, kennyS and Shox are 2 players who wasted some of their talent. I would say half of their talent. Their careers are 2 hot parts. They'll be like a year they're amazing, a year they're just good. 6 months they're average, another year they're amazing. 6 months they're really good. And because of this up and down, you can see they played loads of maps. He's played loads of rounds. He's got an amazing, I know he's an AWPer, but even so, look at that plus minus, guys. 3,317. And that's when you're some Shaq-esque figure fucking around when you feel like it and trying when you feel like it. His KD, remember, he had some bad lands towards the end from time to time. His KD over his career on LAN in CSGO, 1.23. By the way, the only person with a higher one on this entire list, because Simple hasn't played that many rounds, guys, and that many maps. The only one with a higher, this is competition, the only one with a higher one is Device. And Device played a way safer style of AWPing than kennyS. And Device was even a rifler at times in his career. Like, that is unbelievable. 1.14 rating over his entire career on LAN. What a beast kennyS was. Not only at his peak, but over his career in general. What a talent. Genuinely contender for most talented person to ever play CSGO. Maybe CS in general. But you know, someone below him would also be contending that title with him, wouldn't he? It's of course Forest. Now, true, he didn't just play with an IP, did he? But let's be real. The land never arrived for Dignitas, so we get it why it's on this list. You'd think he maybe would have played more rounds. Maybe it's just because they weren't relevant the last year or so when we got the lands back again. Although it's not like all the names above you have been played at that point in time. I'm actually shocked he isn't a little bit higher up. Maybe it just shows how NIP really did drop off after sort of 2016, 2015 type period. And then it was just individual events going to the final. Remember, the names above, people like Shox and Apex, they've been in a billion semis, quarters. The ones at the top have been in so many finals, so many semis, loads of majors they're relevant in the playoffs. People like Forest haven't been relevant in the playoffs of a major for years and years and years at this point in time. So it's understandable it will drop off. Even so, look at the kill to death, 1.15. What a beast. And this guy wasn't playing pure entry. He was playing, in theory, one of the better up, but still on the entry side of the equation. It's still about aggression. And then you look, 1.10 is his rating over his career. One of the best players to ever play. The key thing about this guy was he was never bad. He dropped off and he wasn't elite and he wasn't world class and then he was just a good player. But the talent level for us, you can go watch him stream now and the aim's still there, mate. Then you go down, I always think one of the most underrated players to ever play has got to be NBK. Another guy who's done all the roles seemingly except like primary 1A star and like good AWPer. He actually did AWP a little bit, if people don't know, in Envious at times. So, and even maybe in G2 in the super team, if I went back and looked. Obviously been in loads of different teams. Famously, he was in all the French teams to one point in time until the later Vitality's got really good. Loads and loads of rounds. Pretty good plus minus, considering he's played all these roles. Plus 650. Fragging's pretty decent. Always an underrated aspect of his game. You've got to watch a POV to know how MBK frags. He's one of those guys. It's a bit like Glaive down there. 0.98 doesn't tell you the story because you don't know the role he plays and when he puts himself in entry positions. And MBK, the latter part of his career, was very willing to entry and be a sacrificial lamb to set other people up. He always understood that. One thing I appreciate about the French players is why I hate that narrative that like Ziwu just like hard carried and they had all these bombs. No, he had like not super high fragging stats players, but really experienced genius French players. And what they were able to do, they knew how to play around a Shox, around a kennyS, and get the best out of that type of player. Then you have the aforementioned Taz, like I say, pretty good stats, really. What a good fragging player in general for the kind of roles he played. Definitely a supportive element. Never a star in these teams beyond the first year or two. You have Fallen. Like, look, he was AWP a decent amount of times, so the kill death's very good. Rating's not so great overall. Plus minus is pretty good. We're not nowhere near the kennyS's and the Guardians of the world, of course. Then you're looking, played a lot of rounds as well. He has been in most of those top Brazilian teams, and he's been the one that obviously does the cutting, doesn't get cut generally. That all makes sense. He is a legend, one of the best ever. I do think very overrated, though. Think about some of the people who would talk about things about this guy's career. But you look at the whole body of work of his career, it's very good. It isn't like the Mount Rushmore, top 4 or 5 players of all time. My top 10 would have to have it. No, that's people just using nostalgia and overhyping the biggest moments. The biggest moments of Fallen are amazing. The problem is they happen way less often than some of the other players on this list. Then you go down, Device actually played less rounds than you think. Obviously, he's had times, he actually got kicked from a team early on in 2013. He's had the times where he's had to skip a whole bunch of events. There's even been scenarios, obviously, where he just hasn't played just this entire year. All those lands he's missed in NIP. He could have climbed way further up this list, right? Then you go down, of course, Mr. Reliable, Rain from FaZe Clan. Obviously, he was a star in lesser teams, and then the 2017 phase with Nico. Then you go later on, he's becoming more and more of a side player. He's probably like still good when they brought in Guardian and Olafmeister. But later on, he's transitioning to be just an entry or just a support element or just a CT anchor. Still, you look at his career, pretty good fragging. Solid rating, good plus minus, played loads and loads, deserves to be considered one of the great Nordic players of all time. Then we have Guardian. Now, you need to understand, Guardian obviously has great stats across the board here. Amazing kill death, very good plus minus, played loads of rounds and maps, but for the first few years, he could be, for a brief period, on an amazing team, like the Virtus Pro lineup. That didn't last that long. And then they made a Star of Dragons without him. Then he was on Na'Vi, but he had to hard carry them. And even then, he wasn't kennyS. So in 2014, etc., it's going to be way more up and down. It's not going to be in that many finals and quarterfinals and playoffs in general. Then from 2015, especially the latter part on, it starts to go really, really good for him. He has a good solid few years where he's making loads of quarters, semis. Even then, not winning big 250 tournaments until he gets to simple, etc. And then the Na'Vi period, he was a bit troubled. Then he has the renaissance in FaZe for a year or two. Then he has the not so good period of FaZe. Then he goes over to Na'Vi, which is whack. And yeah, you can see he just hasn't had the same career as some of the other players on this list and hasn't had as many good teams, quite frankly, but a bona fide legend and one of the best players ever. Then you've got Neo. He just played bazillions of games with Virtus Pro. Virtus Pro was consistently a contender for year on year on year on year, even though they would have little slumps within the year or online or have the odd LAN they'd mess up, but they'd always get it back together. They'd swap their roles around. They'd come back and they'd be a contender. They'd be in the semis. They'd be battling for the major. They'd often lose. Obviously, they only won one, but they were in a position where they could have won 2 or more. And you look there, another player, the minus is actually pretty legit. Only minus 106. And he's fragging 0.99. He's playing some bomb-ass roles, dude. Sometimes this guy's in really tough spots. But he was a guy who will get you that, like, one kill you have to get in that spot to make it work, to allow the others to be more aggressive, for Snacks to do, like, the fucking aggressive lurk or whatever. You need players like Neo to set that structure up. And obviously he knows what a superstar needs from when he had to play all those different spots in CS 1.6 and have other people set him up the way he did in CSGO. Then you have the two guys who, I mean, it's just perfect that they're right next to each other on the list. Crims and Olafmeister, one of the best duos of all time. Crims, obviously coming from the LGB era. No one was hyping this guy in that team. It was Dennis. It was Olafmeister. It was even other players in that. It was even Twists, etc. Those are the players everyone was hyping from those teams, not Crims. But you see what longevity this guy's had and what an amazing second or third star he is. And you see, plus 1810 over his whole LAN career. And then you consider 1.13. Mate, this guy is incredible. Like, he really should be considered. Look, he wasn't like the primary star, so I don't think he could win this. But he's one of the best Swedish players. I would say he's top 3 or 4 Swedish players to ever play CSGO. What an amazing career this has had. Just an ultimate workman-like guy who just came and did his fucking job. Then you have Olafmeister. The problem here is he played a long time. He was playing recently with FaZe, even, obviously. The problem is, his best years were early on, and then the drop-off started to get quite steep. He had to swap his roles over, and he never showed any signs of coming back to being a star again. So a lot of the star names here were stars for most of their career. He dropped off way earlier, and he was just one of those guys. It's like Blade Runner, innit? The light that shines twice as bright burns half as long. In his case, he was just this incredible Swedish star who was very, very influential for a year or so. And then after that, he dropped off and then he just became good. And then he became average. And eventually, I would say he did become bad by the end because he was trying to be a support. Get right, being all the way down there is kind of wild. But then again, you think about it from like 2019 on, it's not really happening much for him. Nip was dropping off a lot in terms of how much they were playing overall. He's himself even had health issues, although I don't think he actually had to miss much, but there'll be the odd tournament, I'm sure, where he missed maps, etc. Again, though, look at kill death. Now, you're going to go 1.14, yeah, but he was a beta, and look at that. Only in theory worked super well, guys, the first like 2.5 years. After that, he swapped over. In like 2016, he even played a little bit of entry at times. He definitely played different roles over the years. He wasn't just pure baiting. And if he was, by the way, he can get 1.14 over his LAN career. He is just a god. There's a reason why this guy probably is a top 5 CSGO player of all time, even though you're going to see a lot of his trophies come in those first few years. Then we got Glaive, like I said, but then let's go the last name. It isn't coldzera. It isn't insert anyone else. It's Fur, of course. This is the guy where, look at the plus minus, guys. It's 1,088. 1.07 fragging. And I've already pointed out in my other video I did the other day, this guy could also have done so much more. He could himself maybe be a top 10 player on this list. He could himself have contended for real to be the best Brazilian player ever with coldzera, not with Thorin, with coldzera. If he'd have done better in his career, best Brazilian player in the history of Counter-Strike would be between Kogu, coldzera and Fur, but at the moment it's just Kogu and coldzera. If we're being honest, I'd probably side with Kogu. Haven't seen both their careers. So you can see there's a lot of context to these guys. It's not just as simple as they just played these rounds. I wanted to show you, like, they had different careers, but the impressive thing is everyone on this list, let's be real, would be in a Hall of Fame, is a legend, is among the best players their country ever produced. And what I love about this list, what it shows you is longevity is an amazing sign of a master of Counter-Strike, of the greatest players to ever play. Because if you're a star, that means you were just that good for that long. And if you aren't a star, you had to transition. That showed you could transition. You could still be part of a winning team, and you could make up the structure and shift over your role and adapt to the different metas and games and all the different map changes over the years. And what I also love about this list is, also when you look at the flags, it shows you so much about the history of the game. And it shows you actually how the certain countries dominated early and the ones that were still able to be relevant later on. Interestingly enough, obviously, let's go see in a few years where the Simples and the Nikos are on this type of list. The Ziwus when we go enough years down the line. Then we can talk, look, Simple can be the GOAT, but then we can talk about the longevity some of these players have had, where they've been playing seemingly the whole time in CSGO.
What in God's name is that from Thorin?
This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadjou, Hades GOUD, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam ochs, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Jensen Goh, Kovacevicd, Pacy, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Torin, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Would you like to ask a question in one of those monthly AMAs where sometimes I roast people? Do you want teasers to find out who the guests are for upcoming shows and interviews I'm doing? Maybe you want to be part of one of those cool, lengthy esports discussions that I have. Well, if any of those perks sound tantalizing to you, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today, where? Via the Patreon link in the description box below.